Hi everyone, before we go into the podcast, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm super grateful for your continued loyalty and support. If you could do me a quick favour, if you could give me a review on Apple Podcasts, it really helps the algorithm and it will help this podcast go up the lists. If there are any subjects or topics that you want me to cover, then please do reach out to me on DM on LinkedIn and I will do my best to find the best guest for that subject or topic. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and careerists. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from other people's successes and failures. Today we have Rocky Lalvani, who is a profit-first professional to ensure small businesses are profitable. Hello, Rocky. How are you?
Great to be here with you today, Mark. Excited for the conversation.
Thank you so much for joining. So we're going to talk about the 4 different areas that I go into. And the first one, before we go into education, so you came to the US as a 2-year-old. Do you want to tell me a little bit of that story, your immigrant story?
Yeah, so my parents immigrated for their they didn't immigrate really for their second time, but they were starting over life for their second time. And they decided to come to America for the American dream and to be able to provide a better life for me and better opportunities. And so when they came to the U.S., at that time, currency exchanges weren't like they are today. And so they only had $25 to get started. Right. Thankfully, they had some relatives in the U.S. to help them get on their feet. But we clearly started on the wrong side of the tracks. And over time, you saw us walk up the economic ladder. And one of the things that was somewhat unique is that my parents would get together with their friends who had also immigrated from India around the same time. And they would talk about the American dream and how do you build it. They would talk about money and they would talk about how they were doing things. I didn't realize that most people didn't have money conversations at home and that people weren't taught about money and that it was such a taboo conversation, because within our community, it wasn't, people would just ask blunt money questions of each other. And, somebody would buy a car and somebody else would, well, how much did you pay for it? What kind of a discount did you get? Why did you pick that car? So, because they all had to figure their way forward. And so they were all helping and sharing. And because I had those conversations around money, I think it really helped me to put systems in place when I started building my wealth to be able to ensure that happened.
So let's go. So your parents came from India. How did they pay for the transport to get to the US?
Well, they had money in India, so they bought their tickets there. The problem was you weren't allowed to take currency outside of India.
Okay.
So you couldn't convert your Indian currency into US dollars. That was the problem.
Right. And what did your parents do when they came over here? What sort of jobs did they do?
So my mom ended up being a school teacher and then a guidance counselor in a small private school. My dad, he used to run a pharmacy in India. The problem is his pharmacy degree didn't transfer. Right. So he went back to school for a little while to college. And then after that, he ended up just getting a job that was totally unrelated. And he stayed with that. Actually, I think that job that he got, he literally stayed with till he retired.
Wow.
So he was there for quite a while.
Okay, fantastic. And whereabouts in the US did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey, just outside of New York City.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. So we're going to fast forward to your degree in economics, and we'll sort of fast forward to your MBA as well, just to talk about your education. So why did you choose economics, first of all?
I didn't choose that originally.
Okay.
So I went into school for I went into school for comp sci. So think about it. This is the early 80s. And I was the kid who had the first Apple computer, right? With a whopping 4K of memory. Today with 4K, you do nothing. That's not even a text message, I think. And so I loved computers, and I wanted to go into programming and do all of that. What I didn't realize was computer science wasn't programming. It was more kind of sciences. They wanted me to take all these advanced math classes. And while I was good in math, I wasn't that good. Like, this is well beyond calculus. I'm like, I don't care about any of this stuff. I just want to program computers and learn how to do all of this stuff and play with technology. It was more of a weed out program. It's one of those programs where they try to get rid of as many people as they want because they want to restrict people going into the field. And then they wonder why we don't have enough people in technology today because our systems don't. So after not doing so well with my grades, I looked around and, what could I do? And the other thing that I was always interested in was business. And so the degree that the school had was economics. And so I switched over to that. My grades went through the roof and I graduated. But it was at that point, I had already gotten tired of school. I went to college because culturally we were told we have to go to college. You have to do this. And so I did what I was supposed to do, but I had no desire to be there. So I was always working during college. I was always making a buck, doing something else. I was the college kid who had more money than any other kid, not because my parents gave it to me, but because I actually went out and would hustle and make a buck.
And what sort of things did you do when you were at university?
So I had jobs, even like delivering pizzas. You could make a killing if you were smart enough to be good to collect tips and provide good service. And then I used to go into New York City and buy things and come back and mark them up and sell them. So, that entrepreneurial spirit of making a buck that way. And those were probably the two main things that I did. I took all kinds of odd jobs to always make a buck.
But your studies didn't suffer. It sounded like you excelled in economics.
I excelled in economics. I wasn't a straight A student, but I also realized that going to work and learning things was going to teach me more than doing these classes, which were all theory. So at one point, because of my skills with computers, I knew how to use spreadsheets long before anyone knew what electronic spreadsheets were. So one of my jobs was working in a bank, helping them put their information into spreadsheets and building the spreadsheets and maintaining them. Like, nobody else knew what to do. I was the young college kid in there figuring it all out. For me, it was just get through college and get the degree. It was more that I needed the piece of paper than I had any desire to be there. I think I learned more in the clubs, running different programs and working than I did in most of the classrooms.
Yeah, when we had a chat before, you said that your degree and your MBA didn't build your wealth. It just was a tick. I don't know if you described it as a tick box exercise, but it was essentially just to have the piece of paper. And I'm assuming you've never really used your MBA in your entrepreneurial world at all.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
No, because most of those things are theory. Theory's all well. But, if you're a small business owner, theory's wonderful until, reality hits. And then it's about how do you do things. Now, I think today the world is dramatically different than it was back then because my degrees are all from the 80s and 90s. So the concept of behavioral economics it wasn't well developed. There wasn't that much information. We were learning basic stuff that didn't really apply to the business world as much, or they were all theories and buzzwords, but nobody actually did them.
Yeah, I've spoken to lots of people about this, and I'm going to be interested in your thoughts on it. That they were saying that some entrepreneurs that I know that did an MBA said that an MBA is very much geared if you want to go into investment banking or want to go into a big corporate world. It gives you lots of tools and tactics and techniques to help you along that. But actually, as an entrepreneur, it adds very, very little value.
And that's very true. I mean, they tell you how to do financial accounting, but they don't tell you is how to make the levers work, right? They don't show you the reality of, hey, this is what happens in the real world with these levers. Here's how you actually make them work. They tell you theoretically how they work. I think what was there was a movie, Back to School. It was with the comedian from back in that time. Oh, I can't remember his name.
Okay.
But so the dad's fighting with his son to go to college. And he's like, okay, I never got a college degree, so I'll go back to school with you. You know, and dad's a rich entrepreneur. So he's having the rich entrepreneur college experience, partying and everything. And he's in the classroom with one of these professors who's teaching how to run a business. And he just starts mocking the professor. He goes, that's not the real world. This is what happens in the real world of business. Yeah. Was that Andy Dangerfield or?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay. But the reality is they talk theory, and theory and reality are night and day.
And but I can see behind you for people who are watching this, obviously a well-read man. I spotted immediately Traction, which is something I read relatively recently or listened to relatively recently on Audible. So you're obviously still passionate about learning and developing skills and understanding.
Yeah, so don't let an education get in the way of learning.
Yes.
Right? These are books that I picked that I wanted to read. Now, I will say this. I've noticed colleges are getting better about having more of these books in their classroom instead of the thick macroeconomic principles of whatever. They're starting to get cutting edge type of work. Gino's phenomenal. Gino's got a new book that just came out. He was on a call with me yesterday in our mastermind, and his new book is all about entrepreneurial, and it's how do you know if you're an entrepreneur? Because I think a lot of people get very confused between the difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner, because they are not the same people. And you have to know who you are. I think that's the most important thing. And it's one of the things school never teaches you is who are you? What are your skills? And how do those skills fit into the world? And how do you make it marketable?
So if you don't mind, what's your definition for an entrepreneur versus what's definition for a small business owner?
So business owners are more technicians. So a business owner might be a plumber and he's doing the plumbing. He might be a pizza shop owner and he's making the pizzas or designing the menu, and they're in the business. Yeah. Entrepreneurs they don't run the business. They're the visionaries. So they'll come in and say, we're going to build a pizza shop. I need a designer, a cook who knows how to make great pizza. Here's the vision for what this pizza shop is. And here's how we're going to take this one pizza shop and turn it into 100. That's the kind of people they are. They don't think in one, they think in magnitudes. And they don't do the work generally. Maybe in the beginning they do the work, but over time it's who, not how. Yeah. So they're casting the bigger ideas. They're coming up with the ideas and they're having people implement for them. They're not getting in the weeds. A great entrepreneur. So if you've read Traction, right? There's the visionary and then there's the integrator. So all of these visionaries have integrators. Integrators tend to be more the business people, the business owner. They're the people kind of getting the nuts and bolts down. And I was surprised because Gino said, if you look at the world, 4% are visionaries, only 1% are integrators. And so finding an integrator is a difficult thing to do.
I always think back to the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I really like his definition of the practitioner, the manager, and the entrepreneur. And that when you start a business, sometimes you're doing all three, but you shouldn't. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you should take yourself out of the technician role and more into the entrepreneur role.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. So, so one of your early roles past the side jobs was real estate. And you said you did sell houses in college as well, and you invested in your first property many years ago. I think you said it was 40 years ago, your first property. What was your first role in real estate, and what skills and things did you learn from that experience?
So, this kind of goes back to the immigrant story, right? If we wanted stuff in our house, we couldn't afford to pay people as much. And so I learned how to do everything. As I was growing up, I learned how to frame, how to do electric, how to do plumbing, how to put a roof on. So I learned all the skills of actually working with real estate. In those conversations that were taking place, those money conversations, people were talking about investing in real estate. So I was aware of how people were investing in real estate, how mortgages, like as a kid, I knew what mortgages were. I knew what interest rates were. I knew how those types of things came to be. And then when I was in college, I was selling real estate. And then I got out of college and I got a corporate job, and I walked away from real estate for probably 20 years.
Okay.
So it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I bought my first investment property. And that was a mistake, because I should have been investing in real estate all of those 20 years. I just never took that first step. I always struggled with figuring out the numbers and exactly how does this work, and everyone's always fearful of the risk. And it was also a different world. So, today interest rates are what, 2-3%. Back then interest rates were 10, 12, 9%. So, it's a different world when you try to figure out the numbers of how to make this work. And part of it was, do I really want to be a landlord? I didn't know how to flip houses. I didn't know how to do the numbers to make it work.
Right.
But then after 2008, the markets crashed and opportunities abound. I had all the skill sets. I had all the knowledge. We finally took the leap, and I started getting rentals, and then we started flipping houses. And now it's super comfortable. But getting that comfort, taking that first step was the hardest. Yep. But once we started, everything just came together.
Yeah, that's
but it's
really
starting.
Because so I've got real estate, I've got property in the UK, and mine was by opportunity, as an opportunity. Someone passed away and left me their house, so I decided that I would rent that out, and I had to upskill. I'm not particularly practical. I couldn't do the electrics. I wouldn't even start going on anything like the electrics or anything like that. So I had to find everyone part of we call it a power team, everyone involved. And I got a really good builder who now, touch wood, is fantastic. And any place that I need, that he helps. But there is definitely a skill set to understand costing, how much a refurb costs, and being able to do that accurately to be able to then pull some money out to make a profit. So it's definitely skilled. And I'm imagining, like, at the moment there is property courses everywhere in the UK. You could probably, if you Google property courses, you could probably find 100 plus in every, no, slight exaggeration, but there's probably hundreds of courses out there. I'm assuming there wasn't that availability initially for you.
There were all of these courses, even back then, buy houses, no money down.
Yeah.
And like in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, you're buying the house, no money down, but you're going into so much risk because the way they sold it to me seems sleazy.
Okay.
In the sense that buy a house, no money down, and walk away with money in your pocket. Yeah, you walk away with money in your pocket. You also walk away with a massive loan payable to somebody else. And if you can't make those payments, that's a struggle. And so that's where I really struggled with that part of it. I'm going to say this so first of all, today there is so much. So back then information was gold. So getting information was very difficult. Today, information's everywhere. As a matter of fact, if you want to buy real estate, go listen to Bigger Pockets. They have so much free information. You don't even have to pay for courses. If you want to try and flip a property, you're almost better off, instead of buying a course, doing your first flip and losing 10 grand, because you will learn more than you will ever learn in a course. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you have to actually do it. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the problem. For me, because I understood what was involved in every part of it, I knew if I was getting ripped off on something. Like, I knew what the work is to do something. And when they ran into problems, I knew how to overcome the obstacles. Yep. And so that was where I had my skill sets that I could bring to the table. The other thing is, because I knew the spreadsheets, we could run the numbers on the houses. And it took us a long time to get our first house until we felt really comfortable with the numbers. But once I felt comfortable with the numbers and actually did it and kind of was forced to take action, then things became easy. But it's that first kick to kind of get going. Yeah. I think that's the hardest part.
And we'll talk about automating finances, because I think that's a really interesting story. But I just something that occurred to me. So you were involved in real estate, and then you walked away from it and then came back to it, and now you've invested. Did you ever invest in the stock market?
Oh, yeah, the whole time. I've been investing in the stock market since I was 21. That was all part of my automating system.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on to the automating the finances. So you said out of college, you started to automate finances, your own finances, and that has led to a career that you're currently doing now, making companies profitable. But so you were aware of spreadsheets, you were well versed on spreadsheets. Just talk us through how to automate finances.
So because of my upbringing, I was always taught to spend less than you earn, and to save that difference. So that was just drilled into me, which today everyone spends more than they earn, unfortunately. And I don't care how much you make, you will never be able to fix the equation if you're constantly going to be spending more than you are earning. So when I got my first job, what I did was I literally set up automated streams for savings. So in the United States, we have something called a 401k, which the 401k is just a retirement plan that is offered by a company, and you put money into it. Yep. So I joined up with the company. I put money into my 401k. They had a stock plan. So I put money into the stock plan. They had a credit union. So I put money in the credit union. And then once I got my paycheck, my dad had handed me a brokerage account, which is just an investment account. There wasn't much money in it. But what they would do is set up automated withdrawals from my checking account. So my money would come in from my check, and then they would swipe out money, and it would go and get invested in mutual funds. And so I just started doing this immediately. So before I even got used to my new income coming out of college, I already had all this automated savings going on. And then every year I would slightly increase the amount, just by a little. So you get a raise in, okay, let's say it's a 4% raise. I would keep 2%, and I would increase my savings by 2%. And then in the beginning, I made some mistakes, got into a little bit too much debt. But when I started to pay off a loan, since I was used to paying the loan already, when I was finished paying like a loan for a car, I would just add the loan payment to my savings so that I would start saving more money, so that the next time I bought a car, I would have money already ahead of time. And so by making those small setups, and by it being done without me having to do anything, no matter what happened in my life, the money was always going away. And it's kind of like income taxes, right? If you get a paycheck, the government takes out all your income tax because they know at the end of the year, you won't have the money to pay them.
Yeah.
But if they take a little bit along the way, you won't notice and you'll live on whatever you get left. And that was the same principles I used. When you do that over 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to build wealth. It's just
compounding, isn't it?
It's compounding. Exactly. And it works.
So why do you think people struggle with money these days? And it might be, let's talk about the current sort of situation that we're in. We've hit a pandemic. I believe that people are actually saving more money now than they've probably done the last 10 years because we can't go out and we can't spend money in restaurants and et cetera. But how do you think people get themselves into financial problems?
Well, so first off, I think we are the most marketed to society in the world. So everyone's telling you that if you don't have X, you're not worthy. You're not enough. If you don't have the fancy car, you're not good enough. If you don't have the fancy clothes, you're not good enough. If you're not eating these foods, you're lesser. And so psychologically, that's a problem. The second thing is these marketers, they spend millions and billions of dollars perfecting things to get you to buy them. And they're very good at what they do, especially now with the internet, with these apps. They will spend hundreds of millions of dollars to keep you glued to that app. So I think there's a ton of people pulling that away. People always don't think about tomorrow, right? They think about today and they don't realize that you're essentially selling your future income by going into debt. And most people don't go into debt in this massive one-time decision. It's the reverse compounding. They spend a little bit extra and then, an emergency happens. And there are very few emergencies in life. We all know these things are going to happen, but we pretend like they're an emergency. Our 12-year-old washing machine broke. Emergency, I need to buy one. No, it was 12 years old. It was going to break. Like, you should have planned for that ahead of time and been saving towards it, right? So I think there's a lot of that. And if you think about it, on top of the marketers, everybody else wants you to spend money. So your employer wants you to spend money because if you go out and buy a new car and get a big loan, they know you're going to show up at work tomorrow. Because you feel like I got to work harder to pay for this loan now. So they're happy pushing you to buy the car, right? Your neighbor wants a new car. So they're happy you bought a new car because then they can tell their spouse, hey, they got a new car. We should get a new car. The auto dealer wants to sell you a new car, right? The finance guy who's there, he wants to sell you a new car. Look at all these people wanting to sell you a new car. And it's all against you. And most people don't say, new car, happy, no new car, unhappy, right? But the reality is, new car, compounding and freedom and the ability to say, screw you to my boss in 10 years and go do what I want. If you don't have that counterbalance appropriate, then what are you going to do? Unhappy, new car. It's only $390 a month. Yeah. Only. And then you walk in the dealer and it's for only $50 more a month.
We'll give you this insurance or this extra thing. Yeah, no.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what it is. And that's unfortunately in today's society, you've got to be tough enough. You've got to have a counterbalance to spending. Like, to me, the counterbalance to spending is freedom. Yeah. The ability to do what I want, the ability to say no, the ability not to have to listen to anyone else.
And what's your sort of view on people like Grant Cardone, who talks about cash is trash and you shouldn't save, you should invest and spend and all these? What's your view on him and his approach?
So I haven't listened much to Grant Cardone. He's Mr. 10X guy, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing I have to ask you. I want to work half as much and make twice as much. I don't want to work 10 times as much. I can't tell you haven't paid enough attention to Grant. I have paid attention to some of the other people in that space. So there's a guy out there who, you get a record when you hit 7 figures in sales, right? Russell Brunson.
Yep.
So because of finance, I'm involved in a lot of groups where people are selling all kinds of financial products.
Yep.
And I can tell you that there are people in those spaces, 7-figure launch, woohoo. What they're not telling you is it costs them 7 figures and $1 to do that launch.
Yeah.
And while they've got all this money coming and going and they're renting the Rolls Royce for the picture and standing in front of somebody's plane at the airport, most of these guys don't have that money, right? It's coming as fast as it's going. And on top of that, I don't think it brings you happiness. Right? Because I spent my whole life chasing that. I will be happy when I have this and when I have the house and when I have the car. I got all of that stuff.
Did it make you happy?
No.
Not even for the short time?
You're happy the day you pick up the car at the dealership, but
Because I have a theory about happiness, that happiness is like a fleeting moment. So you buy the car, as you say, you go and buy it, they give you the keys, you drive it home, you're like, this is the best car, I'm so pleased. In a month's time, it's just another car. Even if it's a great car, it's just another car. And I think that is, I talk a lot about on my solo podcast that you shouldn't be looking for happiness because it's a fleeting moment. You should be looking for fulfillment. You should be fulfilled and feel rewarded for what you do, whatever that is, whether that's selling cars or whether that's doing, I don't know, like cleaning the streets, whatever fulfills you and makes you feel good. That's a lot more important than this dream of making you happy.
It's true. You've got to be happy on the journey. You've got to be fulfilled on the journey. Yeah. It's not going to happen when you reach X. That's why you have all these miserable rich people, right? Because they were never happy to begin with. If you're not happy on the journey, if you're not excited about what you do, then that's where the problem comes in. And so you're very correct in that. Happiness is fleeting. You come home, you got the new car, this is nice. But then next year's model comes around and the neighbor, he doesn't have the 5 Series. He's got the 7 Series. Now you still have 4 years of payment.
Yeah.
And you're unhappy.
So let's move on to your actual business where you help you help business owners with their finances. So just tell me a little bit about what you do, how you help businesses, how you make them profitable.
So this was the most shocking thing to me. Like for me, I've always wanted to be a millionaire. And so I just set out on a path. I learned how to do it. I created the automated savings. But I would always look around and go, why aren't there more millionaires? And so I started learning about what are the different things that are occurring there, the money mindsets and all the struggles. And then one day somebody presented a book to me and I started hearing this concept that business owners didn't understand their finances. And for me, that was just like mind blowing. I'm like, wait a minute. Business owners don't understand the business of business. How did they go into business? I assumed all business owners understood the business of business. And I was totally wrong. And what I learned is they all loved what they were doing in the business. So coming back to the technician, they loved their technician part. None of them are accountants. None of them want to be accountants. And the part of their business that many of them hate the most is the finances. And if you think about it, we're all told in school, math is hard. You're not good at math. So that nobody wants to look at the math. When it comes to that part of the business, it gives them a headache. So what are they going to do? Ignore it until they can't ignore it anymore. So once I learned about this, I started to study it more and figure out what was going on. And then I came across Profit First. I don't know if you've seen that book.
I haven't. Who's the author?
It's Mike Michalowicz.
Okay.
Mike is a serial entrepreneur. So Mike is an entrepreneur. He's not a business owner.
Okay.
So he ran a business that was actually a forensic accounting business.
Right.
And the forensic accounting business actually investigated Enron.
Yeah.
And they were involved in all kinds of divorce stuffs. And wherever a lot of money was involved, they were digging into the money. And Ron was guilty. He sold that company, walked away with 7 figures, and said, I'm a smart business owner. Within 2 years, he lost all the money to the point that they were coming for the car keys in the house. Like that bad of losing it all. And he said, I've got to rethink the way that I do business, and I've got to really figure out what all these struggles are.
Right.
And so through that whole kind of reemergence for him, he started writing entrepreneurial books that are designed for the business owner to really think about the business.
Right.
One of those books is Profit First. And the big aha in Profit First is that we have the wrong equation. So accountants have what they call generally accepted accounting principles, and they tell everyone this is how you do the formula for profit, which is sales minus expenses equals profit.
Right.
So where's profit? It's at the end. It's a leftover. It's something you find out when your accountant finally does your numbers. Mike said, well, no wonder everyone's struggling with profit. It's a leftover. So he said, we need a better equation. We need an equation for business owners. Sales minus profit equals expenses. Little tweak, little shift, mindset, dramatic. So you take your profit first and you constrain your spending on your expenses. Same thing that people do. Same way I built wealth, right? I took my profits first and then I lived on what was left.
Right.
So it works. It's compounding. It's simple, basic type of thing. And so that's what I do with business owners. I help them to put profit first. Now, you can't do this overnight. You can't say, I've been losing money and now all of a sudden I'm going to just start taking money out of the business. It will blow up. So what we do is we figure out all the different levers in your business and we examine them and we start to make small changes to your business. And what we do is what we say is, profit is not an event, it's a habit. And so we start the habit of taking profit. Now, if you go to the gym tomorrow and say, I'm going to start working out, and you go sit on the bench, you're not going to load up that bar full of lots of weight, are you, for the first rep? Because if you do, it's going to come crashing on you.
Yeah.
But if you go to the gym, and first of all, showing up at the gym is the first step.
Yes.
Then you go to the bench and you work with an empty bar and you just start practicing the reps of getting comfortable. So what we do for business owners is we say, let's start with 1% business profit. And we're going to take 1% out of your business every month of your sales. And so now you're starting to learn how to be profitable and start to constrain your expenses. And then I work with business owners. We have 15 different levers that we play with that can help you over time increase profitability and do a better job. And so we play around with those and we figure out which ones are best, which little baby steps can we take this month to move you forward. And over the course of probably 18 to 30 months, so a year and a half to 2.5 years, depending on where you're at, will get you to a really strong place. It's like, going to the gym and working out and losing weight. So it doesn't happen overnight.
Do you map out with the client the strategy or how you're going to achieve this continual profitability? Like when you sit down with your client for the first time, how do you approach that with them? So obviously mindset is probably the first place where you start, because that has to shift or you're not going to have success. But past that, when you're do you say to your client, this is how we're going to restructure your business, or this is how we're going to gain the profit first? How do you talk about the strategy side?
So what we do first is we set out a map to say, this is where you are with your different allocations. This is where we'd like to get to. There's no guarantees that we're going to get there. And here are the small changes that need to happen every quarter over the next 2 years to get there. So again, we're looking at making changes of 2 to 3% in what's going on. Then what I do is I start digging through their financials and we start looking at, is this a necessary expense? How can we find better ways to get your source material and so forth, and to do it for less? How can we create better systems within your business to get the process, whatever your business is, without spending as much time, so that also results in cost savings? What are the things most businesses probably can cut 10% of spending because they're wasting money on things that they no longer use, no longer relevant, or it's just nobody was paying attention.
So it's like, for example, what I try and do is my car insurance, I look at every year when it comes up and whether they've up the prices, and I look for alternative providers. Is it that sort of thing that you're looking at? You're looking at other services that the company is providing, and do they need them, and then you give them advice.
Correct.
On that.
So that would be one thing that you would look at on a yearly basis. The other thing is most businesses have all these different softwares that they're using. Are you still using it? Or are you still paying a monthly fee for software you no longer use? Or are you at the highest tier and using bottom tier price, features, but paying for top tier? Sometimes you've just stopped even using it, but you're still paying for it. How do we improve your processes and put systems in place to make things go faster? How do we prevent mistakes? If you're in the construction business, a mistake is very, very costly. It will wipe out an entire year's profit. So making sure we've got systems in place. And then the other thing is there's a lot of vanity spending. I need this, I need that. No, you don't need this and that. Entrepreneurs all have shiny object syndrome. So it's giving them accountability.
Absolutely, on accountability. But is that there are obviously difficult conversations that you're having with the entrepreneur? Do you need the newest version? I don't know, the newest iPhone. Do you actually need the newest iPhone to be able to do your business, or does last year's model just work perfectly well? Is it that though? But how difficult is that to have with people? Because some people have convinced themselves in their mindset that they need the latest item, the latest.
Okay.
Product.
You need the latest iPhone? Great. We're going to get you the latest iPhone. Tell me how that's going to increase your business. Give me numbers. Justify it. Let's go back to the spreadsheet. Let's put pen to paper. What additional feature of the iPhone, whatever, is going to give you more clients and customers and revenue than your current iPhone?
Yeah. It sounds very simple, and it is simple. It is very hard. The mindset is the shift, isn't it? That's your golden nugget, is that you need to shift mindset.
Losing weight and getting healthy is really simple. It's called diet and exercise, but nobody wants to hear those words.
Yeah. We all want to do it. It's like the car. Like, instead of saving up and buying a car, you put it on finance, and you spend you have to pay it for 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever, because that's culturally, that's where we are in the US and the UK, that everyone wants everything now. You say you want a new TV. Okay, well, I'll finance it over 2 years. It's only £50 a month or whatever. Right. But is it necessary? Is it needed? I think it's really interesting that you're actually being you're countering the culture that is in the UK and the US through business and through personal finance with your teachings, because you're actually saying there is too much of, we want it now, we will buy it now. Oh, okay, I can do it on finance.
Well, and the same thing. Some of my clients are like, well, we want to bring in this new line to sell. Go, how do you know it's going to sell? Oh, I'm sure it's going to sell. Okay, tell you what. Let's get 20 pre-orders. You get me 20 pre-orders and show me that people want this, we can bring it in.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll go out and they'll go, nobody wanted it. I go, well, it's a good thing we saved all of that money.
Yeah.
Right. It comes down to accountability. It comes down to questioning decisions, and it comes down to putting dollars and cents to decisions. Because I think more often than not, entrepreneurs go with their gut, not with what the spreadsheet says. And the spreadsheet's going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So looking forward now, Rocky, what does the future hold for you?
So right now I'm still growing my clientele one-on-one, where I work directly with business owners. And I have a clear understanding of how they behave and what they do. I still have fun doing it. So I'm going to continue doing that for the foreseeable future. But I only have so many clients, like I only have so many time slots, because to me, time is much more valuable than money at this point in my life. So I only work with a handful of people. I know at some point we're probably going to have to put through some type of group coaching.
Right.
And so I think that's a future is taking people, bringing them through, holding their hand, and teaching them the principles as a group to be able to do this. And then putting them into a group after that with much bigger groups so that they can hold each other accountable, they can ask each other questions, and they can encourage each other. So if somebody is in a business and says, hey, this is the problem I'm running into, 3 other people who are in that similar business can say, well, this is how we solved it without spending money. So I tell business owners, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. Mm-hmm. We've already got the first course is already out, which is Effortless Cash Flow. It was essentially, that was version 1. Okay. And based on the feedback from version 1, we'll update it. And we'll come out with version 2. And then I think over time, we're going to have version specific. So we'll go into industry specifics, right, so that we can customize it towards your particular industry. So for me, that's it. I will be crystal clear. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a technician. I love being a technician, but I'm also going to be a limited time technician, meaning I only work X amount of time and I can only do so much work, and that's it. And I'm okay with that.
What does living your life beyond your practice mean for you? So,
number 1 is learning. Like, core thing for me is always kind of learning and improving myself. So it comes back to actually what you talked about. How do I find fulfillment? Because that's the ultimate goal. And I'm a good way there, but it's a never-ending, right? It's a never-ending story.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and so I'm constantly learning about that, and I want the freedom and the time to do that. I spend hours a week just learning and reading. So that's a big part.
Sorry, what's more important, learning or networking?
So there's a balance. I spend tons of hours networking too. You know, at the end of the day, the learning gives me fulfillment. The networking puts dollars in my pocket. Right? Now, can they go together? Yeah. So on one of my podcasts, I always have authors on. And so not only do I get to read a book, learn from the book, but talk to the author. Right. And I'm networking. So like, that's what we call stacking things together. Yeah. So when you can stack things together like that, you really compound and multiply the results that you get. And then that turns into marketing. So now I got another stack on top of it.
Yeah, that's because it's an interesting thing. It's something I'm not struggling with, but just working out at the moment, the sort of balance between the learning and the networking, and being able to do both effectively and efficiently, and use the most amount of my time for benefit for me.
And I think it's different. It's different for everyone. Because I've already built my wealth, I'm no longer chasing the dollar. So I have a different, what for me, if somebody is younger and they still need to pay all their bills, then you're going to have to put networking ahead, because if networking's what putting the dollars. Now, if you need to learn something to be able to offer it, well, then you're going to have to be much more selective in your learning and much more focused.
Yeah. Have you got a book in you?
I think so. There's one being ghostwritten. It's going slow.
Okay.
As all books, right? They take forever.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the first book is a book on harmony. And it's just literally, I don't think people think that life has to be in balance, and you can't live life in balance. It's never going to be in balance. It is basically, it's kind of a guide to the basic things that you need to do in life to have that ultimate fulfillment. So we talk about health, right? Because if you don't have health, you'll spend all your money to get it back. We talk about basic money principles. Money is basic. It's a basic tool. And when you understand the basic principles, it's not hard. It just takes time, which is what people don't like. Is everyone wants overnight, not over time. We talk about networking. And it's not just networking, but it's relationships within your family, with your friends, within business. We talk about spirituality and how does that fit into your life? I think too often people follow a path without thinking about it, or they're not even living in congruence with what they say they're supposed to be doing. And then we talk about the most precious asset of all, which is time. How do you create systems and processes so you're not wasting all your time, because we only get so much of it? And then we talk about, number one, what's your purpose? You have to have crystal clarity on where you're going and what you want. And then, like you talked about, mindsets. What are the right mindsets to have? How do we put all these things together in harmony and create our plan, not the plan somebody else created for us? Because I think that's what happens to too many people. They're living somebody else's dream.
Well, I will definitely read that book if it does come out. It sounds brilliant. Okay, I'm coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They don't need a quick fire answer. It's just to mix things up a little bit. What's the best decision that you made?
So the reason I have freedom today is because at 21 years old, I automated my finances. And I didn't realize that that was going to give me success. But as I look backward, that was the one thing that ensured everything else happened.
Awesome. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
The best piece of advice I've been given. That's hard. I'm horrible at bests.
Okay.
But let me think. So I'm not going to say this is the best, but I think it's one. It's the fact that relationships matter, and relationships are what get things done. I grew up in a time where relationships were hard. And what I meant by that is when I graduated college, people would move around. Well, there was no internet. There were phone books. Like if somebody moved, they disappeared unless they happened to call you and your phone number hadn't changed. So I think just the power of building great relationships is something that I missed out on, and that I think I learned much later in life is how important that is.
I would agree. Building relationships. People call it networking, but really networking doesn't give it enough credence. It's about building relationships, building connections, building trust with people. That's what's most important in life and in business.
So I think people misunderstand networking. The purpose of networking is to serve and help others.
Absolutely.
Not for you to give.
I would agree. Who has helped you most in your career?
Who has helped me most in my career? So I worked in corporate, and I got to tell you, I mean, it was successful monetarily. It wasn't successful otherwise. I think the smartest piece of advice I got from one of my managers was like, be careful what you want. He's like, the last 8 people I promoted are all divorced. So just be careful what you really want and what you're going after.
It's really interesting, the whole corporate. So I left my corporate job October last year, October 2020. And it's really interesting when you look at your bosses and your boss's bosses and the bit higher, the C-suite. Do you actually want to be those people? It's a really good show of the company that you're in. Is it a good fit for you? B, do you want to have that lifestyle? C, do you want to be that person that they are? Because you probably will be if you carry on that path. So it's very interesting.
And for that very reason, I always stayed towards the bottom in my corporate as far as hierarchy, because I just did not want to deal with all the political stuff. I'm horrible at that.
Do you have any regrets?
You know what? It comes back to the relationships. The fact that I did not do a better job in connecting with and maintaining all those relationships over the years. As people would move and shift, I did not follow up, and I didn't maintain those things. And so I think that's probably the biggest regret, is not doing more of that.
Yeah. What are you most proud of?
Kids. I got 2 wonderful kids in college. I've done a great job of raising them, both financially and also in their ability to pick their own path. You know, to have the freedom to say, this is what I want, this is how I'm doing things, and not following what society told them they have to do.
Good. What does legacy mean to you?
So legacy comes back to, for me, it's the kids and the grandkids. It's leaving. It took me probably close to 50 years to figure out a lot of this stuff. Legacy to me is making sure that they can do it so much faster without all of the mistakes, and the ability to, that they don't have to waste time. And that goes for anyone else too. Like if I can show other young people how to do that as well, that to me is legacy as well.
Fantastic. So where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Best website is profitcomesfirst.com. And from there, you can find the podcast, Profit Answer Man, a ton of free resources that you can find there as well. And if you want to chat with me, there's links to be able to chat with me there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rocky. Thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. It's been a blast to have this conversation.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.